Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. This is going to be this week's Q&A. So I got 3 pages of questions to go through. A lot of people asked some really great questions this week. If you have a channel that you want promoted, put your question below because I will answer it next week and you'll get a little bit of promotion. Now that I have 1,000 subscribers, I'm like some YouTube star or something. Not really, but at least it helps. Every little bit helps. So, if I can help other channels out by promoting them, by, giving them a shout out, then I will do so. So my goal is to help the community, really. So with these questions, there was one question that actually is not listed on these pages that I wanted to respond to. Somebody asked me, and I couldn't find where they asked me, and I just saw the question. I was like, oh, I'm going to go back and answer it, but I don't know where it was. So I want to get to that weird question that was not part of the questions. Somebody asked me, they had seen my video where I was showing like my room tour, and they were curious about my Ant-Man collection. So I have like one section on one of my walls where it's just like a few Ant-Man titles, like kind of key issues. And I'm going to show you those. I took them down. So there's this one, which is Tales to Astonish number 44. It's still in the bag, so it doesn't look the greatest, but I'll actually take it out of the bag so you can see it. But this is the first appearance of the Wasp. And it's actually, my copy is quite nice. Even though it's a 3.5, it shows quite beautifully. It's just a really nice copy. So yeah, it's just the spine has a little bit of damage. So that's why it was graded as a 3.5. But this is the first appearance of the Wasp, and it's a 3.5. So that's the first one. And then the next one in my collection of Ant-Man. These are just the ones I show up on my wall. Like I have a few slabs. I don't have that many slabs of Ant-Man, but I do like Ant-Man, so I just happen to have the keys slabbed, but the non-keys aren't slabbed. And this is the next one. This is Tales to Astonish number 35, and this is the first time he appears in the suit. Like this is Henry Pym in the suit. And it's, kind of a cool cover. So it's really the first Ant-Man where he's like fully the costumed character. So it's Tales to Astonish 35, and it is a 3.0. So when I got these, they weren't the crazy prices that we see now. Yeah, so I was kind of lucky in that respect that I still paid a lot, but it wasn't the crazy prices that we see nowadays. And the last one is a restored copy. The bottom edge, top and bottom edges were trimmed. Okay, so that's the worst type of restoration because it's a one-way thing. You can't fix that afterwards. So this really helped me in a way because it wasn't a huge amount of restoration in terms of like the amount of trimming. So it didn't really affect the book that much. But it did affect the price. I was able to get it like half price or a third of the price. It was pretty cheap, which is good. I like that. So this is Tales to Astonish 27, and this is the first appearance of Henry Pym. And I'm always saying his name wrong. Yeah, Pym. So yeah, so it's it's kind of a cool. I like the cover too. It's just I love these kind of. These were kind of that where they were going from horror genre to more like superhero. So this was kind of that transition book. Very cool cover. I really like it actually. So I'm a big fan of Ant-Man. I always thought it was kind of cool. I always liked the idea of becoming small and having superpowers. So that was kind of the thing with that. So that's my collection. That's a 3.5. And yeah, that's my keys that I have up on my wall for Ant-Man. So now we'll get into the questions. So the first one is from John Gabriel. He asks, depending on what sources you consult, the golden age of comics lasted about 20 years, the silver age about 12 years, the bronze age about 13 years, the copper age about a decade, and so far the modern age of comics has lasted 28 years. In your opinion, is there a time is it time to create a new one, two, or perhaps three new classification of eras? So yes, definitely. Actually, I would have divided the 90s from like 90 to like early 2000s as its own generation, like sort of that 90s boom. And I would have called it the plastic era. Okay. So he's basically asking a follow-up. How many new eras would you have created? Should be created? I would say two, maybe three. And I'll explain those three in a second. Um, how long should each of these new eras last in years? And most importantly, is there a particular comic book that you believe should be regarded as a start of each new era? Okay, so, and I'll get to all of those. So, the 90s, I actually believe that the 90s were kind of a special era, and that's not recognized as an era. So, the way it works is if you know the history of comics, um, comics originally, in terms of printed form, started in 1897 to 1938, where it's not really comic books. It's not. It's more like comic. They're cartoons maybe or illustrations, and they were that was kind of that era. So that's considered the platinum era from 1897 to 1938. Then the second era, which is the golden age. Now the golden age was 1938 to 1950. And some say that's even up to 1956, but that kind of era. And then there's the Silver Age, which is 1956 to 1970. And then there's the Bronze Age, which is 1970 to 1985. And then the Modern Age is from 1885 to present. That's according to Google. I would actually say that some of those dates are a little bit off. Bronze Age to me is really up till 1990 or 89. Modern Age is really 90 to now. So 31 years of the Modern Age. There's also the Atomic Age, which is another one of these sort of forgotten ages where it kind of divides the Golden Age and Silver Age, where it sort of goes between, and it's a lot of these kind of atomic related, like nuclear bomb, a lot of like sci-fi stuff kind of in that era. And that ran from the late 40s to the early 60s or even late 50s. Like it's kind of one of those weird eras that some collectors call certain comics the atomic age of comics. And actually I have one in the background. I don't even know if you can see it. One of my Wonder Womans kind of fits into that with the flying saucer. A lot of like that kind of like UFO, flying saucer, nuclear bombs. Those kind of ones were the atomic age. Okay, so that was a little bit of history. Now getting into the question in terms of the modern eras. So as I was saying, I was thinking that the 90s were kind of the reason I call it the plastic age, and I call the 90s to like early 2000s the plastic age because of the fact that it was kind of like that overly produced era where you get like the foil covers, you get you just get a whole bunch of crazy massive print runs too. You get the 5 million print runs of X-Men #1 or something like that. And there's that kind of kind of thing that represents that era, that whole overproduction. Kind of comics become kind of just like mass produced, and with real no value behind it or things to back it up. Also, you get a lot of like these tacky kind of superheroes in a way. The superheroes were kind of plasticky in many ways. They were overly muscular. They were just like very unrealistic, very not real looking, not what you would expect atomically correct person to look like. So you get the Chris Pratt stuff, you get the Jim Lee, that whole era. And the book that I would say sort of defined that era would be X-Men #1 or Spawn #1. Those are the big ones that I would say, hey, these books define that era. So I would say it kind of lasted up to when the bust, I should have to say, which I would put, even though it was earlier than this, I would say early 2000, though it was earlier. I would say 2000s, where there was sort of a period from early 2000s to maybe 2015, like kind of that era, where there was a real sort of bust within the comic community. It almost looked like the whole thing was going to collapse. People weren't going to their comic shops as much. It was a real kind of a slow time within the comic industry. It was just sort of a dead time. Comics kind of got revived, not only because of the lockdown. Actually, COVID really saved comics, but even before that, there was a whole situation where comics kind of got a resurgence from the movies, the Marvel. I'd almost say that this is the Marvel age that we're in right now, where we get this kind of Marvel MCU kind of like any movie that comes out. Oh, people are like all excited about that comic. And that's really what defines the current age that we're living in. This whole spec related to movies, and getting the comics that are related to the movies more so than any other generation. That whenever there's even an announcement that a comic is optioned for a movie or something like that, there's a lot of interest that's created. And I believe that that's what's really driving the market more than anything else. So I would say that I'd call it the MCU or the Marvel age, or the age of I don't know. I'm not sure. Like some kind of movie related age. I don't know. Or TV. It's also TV. So it's weird how that happens. Like it's beyond just comics. It's that whole cultural age where it's these other influences outside of the comic community that's influencing the comic community, and comics are having such an impact on the culture itself. So it's interesting now that we see so many movies, even ones that are not necessarily like superhero related, but are connected to comics. So many movies nowadays, so many TV series are related to comics, and that's very interesting within our culture. So I would maybe call it the geek age, comic collector geek. So I would say the geek age, okay, just to be weird. So this is the geek age. So, and that would be from maybe right around that 2010 to 2015 era to now. And that age is really defined by I'm not sure what book you would say, oh, this is like of this geek age. If I say it enough, maybe it'll become popular. But the geek age would be probably books that related to movies. Like I can't even think of a good example, because a lot of the movies are based on older comics, but they did influence comics. I'm just trying to think of a good example. But you guys comment below what you think would be the book that defines this era, and do you think my geek age is a good descriptor for it? Okay, so that's that question. That was a huge question. And then the next one is Cantu Comics. He basically said, congrats on 1K subscribers. Aside from your amazing Golden Age comics, do you collect original art, comic art? If not, is there a particular cover or page of a book you would consider buying if given the opportunity? I actually do collect some original art, and I actually commissioned a bunch of art, and I have it, but it's not really meant for this channel. It's a little bit risque. So, but I'm going to show you some of my original art. I actually showed it in a previous video, but I'll show it anyways again. So some of my original art. I actually have a bit of original art. So this is Vampirella, some original art. This was a comic cell that was used to potentially get a TV show made about Vampirella that they were going to film in Japan. So this is the first one. And I have a bunch of these. And this is another one, another Vampirella. Original one-of-a-kind animated cell. They actually did it backwards, which is kind of interesting. So this is the Vampirella one. I really like this one. This is really beautiful. And then there's another. And this is Jita, just another great animated cell. And then we have, this is an original painting by William Dubé. And he was the one that was working with Warren Publishing. And he created a character called the Rook. And this is the Rook. He's kind of a time-traveling cowboy, if that makes any sense. Just a really kind of a cool character. And this is his first appearance and his first art. This is the first art of the character. So very, very rare, valuable painting by the artist that created him. So this is the first time the artist created the cover for for this character in comics. This is his son actually reached out to me multiple times to try to get this from me. It's just a really great art piece. William Dubé is no longer living, so a lot of people are seeking this cover. I imagine it would sell for tens of thousands of dollars just because it is quite rare. Well, it's one of a kind. So yeah, painted cover for Erie. So that's that one. And then the last one is just a bunch of characters related to Warren. So you'll notice a lot of Warren kind of stuff, but I do have other stuff. I have some Vampirella original art and some other things. But this is just a bunch of the characters, some of the girls from Warren Publishing. Okay, so that's some of my original art. Okay, the next question. And this is from Bloop Comics. Actually, Bloop, the funny thing is Bloop and I both hit 1,000 subscribers around the same time. So I wanted to just say congratulations on 1,000 subscribers, Bloop Comics. He is a young guy. Actually, he did a face reveal for his 1,000 subscriber mark. I thought that was really cool because I always thought he was a little bit older. I thought he was maybe closer to my age, but he turns out to be this young guy. So I thought that was really cool. So he says, congratulations on 1K subscribers. And I say congratulations to him too. Well-deserved, dude. For my question, what's your setup like? What do you use to film your videos? What mic do you use? If you use a mic, etc. Keep up the good work. On to 2K subs and more. So as I was mentioning in a previous video, I just use my cell phone for now. And my cell phone actually does really great audio. It picks up my voice quite well. And the lighting I use is just the basement lighting. So just really simple. I keep it really simple. The phone does a pretty good job of recording and doing an excellent job of, like, you know, making the videos solid. One thing that I do use, and I don't use it all the time, is there's an extra software. Like, the annoying thing about Apple is that you can't pause and then restart the video. So you got to do it one shot. And I usually can do that, but sometimes I'd like to pause and then move the camera, you know, so it's not like me dragging around the camera, or I have to open up stuff or something like that. And I need to pause and then re-record. So there's a software that you can get for the iPhone called Cam Plus. And that adds like new features to the way the videos work. You can stop the video, you can record, you can slice things, you can add like effects. So it's quite a nice little software, and I paid for it. It was like $6 or something like that. It wasn't expensive. Okay, so that's my setup. Very, very simple. I keep the editing to a minimum because lack of time in my life. I have to pay for all these comics, so I have to work quite hard. Okay, Sunil Designs, he's a good friend of mine, by the way. He asked, hypothetical question. If you were in charge of either one of the big publishers, how would you go about trying to bring back fans for comics? Reboots, resets, uh, classics universe where fans could read about characters in the original version instead of the modern, often reimagined versions? Just hypothetical. I know there are a number of factors like being mindful of various special interest groups, but I was thinking if you didn't have to worry about anyone else's influences when making decisions, what supreme and with you have supreme and final say, how would you go about trying to make fans want to buy comics again, especially ones that seem to be getting rebooted or reimagined? Okay, and that is something I talked about in a previous video, and I got a little bit of flack for that from some of the other people within the comic book community. Most people liked my video, but I got a few people that didn't like my video where I kind of commented on the current state of comics. I really don't like to get into the political elements of comics nowadays, and that's maybe the direction that I would take. I think comics should be fun. I think comics should be an escape. The reason we read comics is we want that escape, and we want to see characters who are cool and not not social justice, no agenda being pushed with those characters. I like to see characters that are flawed. One of the things that drives me nuts about Superman, for example, is that he doesn't have major flaws. And I really think that that creates a lot of problems with that character. The only thing that he has is the weakness to kryptonite. And that's kind of a major flaw. That he doesn't have a flaw, I should say. I kind of like characters that have like a bit of an arc, that hero's journey that they have to go through. And I find that that's really lacking. A good example of the way that that is lacking is the character of Rey in the Star Wars movies. If you look at the character of Rey, um, she basically could do anything. She was perfect in every way. She was a woman. She was super empowered. She could beat up big men. she could fly spaceships that she had never seen before. She could do everything, and that there's no arc there. She meets Kylo Ren and picks up this lightsaber for the first time. First time she picks up a lightsaber, and she goes up against Kylo Ren, who's a Jedi. He is, well, a dark Jedi, but a Sith Jedi, but he's somebody that's trained with the lightsaber. He's trained in the ways of the Force. He is awesome. He is already established. He's gone through all that journey, and he gets defeated by her. That is just so unrealistic, and it kills any like excitement about future prospects between the two of them, because you know that she's already beaten the guy that she has to beat. So there's just no journey there for the hero to take. And I really think that that's important for the story, that you have to have that hero's journey. And one of the things that I would like to see is like stories being more creative. I not only doing these hero journey kind of stories, but really be creative. I actually like what James Tynion is doing. I think James Tynion has the right mindset in terms of the way he's creating his books. He's creating these really unique ideas. Maybe like the one with something is killing children. Really kind of cool idea. Like this monsters that only certain people can see, like kids. That's been done before, I know, but it's a cool idea. And he's got this woman that comes to the town, and she's got some issues of her own, and I like that whole kind of dynamic. And you get the same with Department of Truth. I mean, that's just such a cool idea that conspiracy theories could become the reality. And I like these kind of things where some creativity within the story writing. And that's really important for me. I think that I can watch movies, for example, that are horrible movies, terrible production, terrible acting, terrible everything, except if the story is great, if it's just a really brilliant story idea, I can love the movie. I can just be like, this is the greatest movie ever, even though it lacks all those other things, because I can really appreciate the story. And as long as the story is great, I can just ignore the rest. I can fall in love with the story. I think what is it? I'm trying to remember the name of the movie. Why am I blanking? It's like one of my favorite movies. Uh, I want to say They Live. It's the one where they have the sunglasses and they they the whole movie he realizes that the whole world has been taken over by aliens, and when he wears the sunglasses he can see the subliminal messages that are everywhere telling people to obey and sleep and just not cause any disturbance for the aliens that have taken over the world. And it's not a great movie in terms it's got the same soundtrack that constantly plays over and over. The acting is a little bit ham-fisted, but it's a great movie. I love the movie, and I can't remember the name of it properly. I think it's They Live, but it's a great movie, and it's one that's actually parodied in a lot of things, a lot of memes about it. So just a great movie. So that's my point, that I focus on the story. I just want people to really write good stories. And actually, a little bit about me. I've actually written several books. I've written several stories. I have a few hundred short stories that I've written. So I'm really into that idea and telling the story that is kind of cool. I love cool storytelling. So I'd like to see more of that and focus on that. And even if the character is like, sexist or whatever, like flawed in many ways, I don't mind that. I think that actually can be interesting and that can be explored. And I don't mind having people be real. I prefer that kind of character than something that is just, stripped out of any kind of controversy, any kind of, interest. Like it's okay to have a character that is very flawed. Um, you know, I just want to see more of that, where characters are flawed and they are more human. Uh, and they, you know, one thing that writers should always be aware of, just to quickly to kind of hammer this in, is the fact that it's a character. You're as a writer, you're disconnected from that character. And what I mean by that is you can sort of create somebody that is like whatever. You can make the most racist character, most sexist character, most diabolical, evil character, but that's not you. That's not you. Are separate from that character that you've created. And that character can be like somebody who does represent the worst in humanity, but you can have that character go through changes. You can show how that character, though flawed, can change, and that's where people actually learn. So if you're really trying to push an agenda, well, there is ways of doing it that are much better than the ways that are done now. So that would be my method of addressing that element of our craziness that's going on right now. But yeah, that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear everyone else's opinion on this. Am I totally out to lunch? I'd love to hear that. So, okay. So next is from Comics and Beyond. He asks, my next question is, do you own any PGX graded comics? Do you think they will ever be as valuable as CBS or CGC books? Okay, yes, I actually graded a bunch of comics, about 50 comics from PGX. And the reason I chose PGX, just so you know, is I chose them for a very specific reason. I do not like sending my books away and not getting them back quickly, because I feel weird when they're away, and I feel like there's so many things that can go wrong when they're away that I'm worried, am I going to get my books back? And when you send them off to CGC or CBS, CBCS, they're very slow about bringing those books back to you. So especially CGC. CGC is the worst. It's like 8 months, maybe a year before you see your comics again. And that's a lot of time. I'm getting old. I can't wait for my comics to come back that long. So I chose PGX for that reason. And also I chose it because it was cheaper. It was a cheaper option. Those were the two reasons why I chose them. And I found that the grading was reasonably good. So I have a bunch of PGX comics. You can actually see a few of them, like my All Star #8 right there. I'm trying to show it. I'm not sure if I there. Okay, that one. That is PGX. And yes, you are right. PGX will always be less valuable than CGC. CGC is got the reputation, and it will always be more valuable than CBCS because it's really the one that is the industry leader. And people will always, as long as they keep their reputation strong, CGC, I should say, will always keep that strong value associated to their books. If their quality goes down in their grading, if their quality goes down in terms of the slabs that they produce, you might see a shift there. But I think CGC will be always a little bit more expensive. And you can expect anywhere from 20 to 30% more expensive. It actually does impact a lot the value. What is really interesting, though, CGC actually competes against itself. And what I mean by that is if you look at older slabs, there's kind of a weird effect. Sometimes the older slab is cheaper, and sometimes it's more expensive. And so you'll see like a CGC copy, like a 9.8 or 9, like a not 9.8, 9.0 comic. And people actually pay a premium for that older case of CGC. And the reason that they're paying that premium is the older cases, it was before people started pressing their comics. Like really pressing has been something that's been a very recent phenomena. So what happens is like with the older cases, people are like, oh, it's a 9.0. CGC was pretty strict back then. Maybe if I crack it open and press it, I can get that higher grade, that grade bump. And the difference between a 9.0 and a 9.2 or a 9.4 is like 2 or 3 times in price sometimes. It can be pretty dramatic. So a lot of people will look for those older labels just to have that opportunity. So that's one of those interesting things I just felt like I should mention. Okay, so next question. Dave collects Yeah. He's a good friend of the channel. Great channel, you should check him out. Dave collects Yeah. Again, congrats on 1K, sir. What is your favorite modern key in your collection? And I just happen to have that right above me. I'm just going to reach up and get it. It's this one. And this is Zombie Tramp #1, first series. I love this comic. I can't tell you how much I love this comic. It is the comic for me. It's signed by the artist, Dan Mendoza. It is just such a rare comic. There is less than 10 of these in CGC or like graded comics. There's really rare. This is like one of those comics that you just don't see often. I saw it once and I bought it. Okay, so it is just a really rare comic. I really like Zombie Tramp. It's trashy, it's silly, it's it's what I was saying about storytelling that I like. I like ones that they they just don't care about any political correctness. They just do whatever they want, and that's what this is. It's sexist, it's sexy, it's silly, it's wonderful. So I like this comic. So you can see she's a sexy zombie. What can you say? It's just something lovely like that. So Zombie Tramp #1. This is my favorite modern comic. So before this, I would have said something else. Like I would have said maybe Invincible #1 or My Bone #1. But I love this. I love this comic. This is just, I was so excited to get this into my collection. And I just recently got it within the last month or so. So definitely my favorite comic in my modern collection. So really rare comic, by the way. This is like a $1,000 to $2,000 comic. Just so you know, it's really rare. Really, really rare. Okay, so that's my favorite modern comic. So the next one is from TS. Congratulations on your 1,000 subscribers. Nice to see a fellow Canadian getting some YouTube comic community love. Keep it going. Here are a few questions for your consideration next time. So he wrote, like, when he says a few, this is great. He wrote this big, long paragraph. I'm going to go through these questions. I think they're great questions, so I'm going to read them. I just thought it was funny. Here's a few. It's like this big paragraph. It's just awesome. Okay, I like this kind of interest, so I got to support him. Okay, what type of supplies do you prefer, and how do you store your collection? For example, some supplies you've mentioned previously, the Mylars for providing UV protection to slabs, and the micro chamber paper. Also, how often do you change your bags and boards? Do you change them out when you receive books? Do you store books in a particular way to prevent damage? So that's the first question. So I do rebag my books if the bags are crappy. So if it looks like the bag is kind of iffy, I will rebag it and just put a nicer bag on it. I use, I'm trying to remember the name of the company. It's a Canadian company that makes the bags. Really good company, and I can't remember the name. It's like, how that is. I only do it really rarely. I've left some bags from like 20, 30 years ago where they're still in the same bags. When they get kind of like that stickiness, or like if I can see that it's like not the good kind of bags that last forever, I will replace it. And I replaced about 300-400 bags. It was painful. I don't want to do that too often, but I do it when I think that they're necessary. And generally I try to buy the acid-free bags and acid-free boards, that kind of stuff. So the next question he asks, shipping to Canada is a pain. Oh, one last thing. He asked about storage. So if you look around my room, I have lots of long boxes. I actually showed it in my giveaway video where I kind of gave a little bit of a tour. Everything is basically stored in this one room. I have all my SOTI books in my office upstairs, but storage-wise, it's all inside my basement. This is like a old cold cellar, but it's temperature controlled. Basement room where it stores everything. It can hold about 20 to 30,000 comics, to give you a size. Okay, that's where I store everything. So shipping to Canada has always been a pain and very costly. You recently mentioned using the services of a company called Stackery, and I really do recommend Stackery, by the way. Any tips or money-saving ways you've found? Stackery is probably the best tip that I can give anyone in terms of saving money when you're in Canada. So one of the big costs for Canadians is that shipping of individual books. So, there's so many times when you want to buy a $5 book and shipping it to Canada is $15, or $20 just to ship a $5 book. So it really doesn't make sense to do that, right? And sometimes it's impossible to find that book in Canada. And when I first started to get back into collecting a lot of books, I would actually pay that $15 shipping. And like, there's no way you'll ever get your money back on that book, because best case scenario, the book triples in value, right? And it's $15. Well, it's still less than what you paid. So having Stackery, a lot of these American vendors will provide free shipping within the US. So you can get those cheaper comics sent all to Stackery. They'll stack them up like in big, like all together. And then you're paying $20 to ship them all instead of like individually $5 or like $15 here, $15 there. I've saved a ton on shipping. So I really recommend Stackery. But other big saving things is I do look for vendors in my country. So in Canada, I look for vendors. If you're in other countries, I recommend looking for like vendors within your community. Also, try your LCS. Another trick that I found, this is kind of interesting, where there was a bunch of comics that I missed out on. I just didn't get them when they were released. And I found that my my local LCS was willing to back order those comics for me. So that was kind of nice. So you can ask your LCS if they're willing to do that. If once it gets to really old books, like the really back issuey books, that becomes harder. But sometimes you could be surprised that if you kind of put in that word with your LCS that you're looking for certain books, people come in and sell their collections all the time, and they will actually pull those books for you and maybe even give you a good deal on them. So I've done those ways of getting books a little bit cheaper. Okay, so the next one is, do you press or clean any of your raw books? If not, do you use any local Canadian companies to perform these services for you? I do not press my own books. I am too scared to do that. I know how to do it. I know the whole process. And I was debating about buying one of those little presses, but I'm not going to do it. What I have done is when I sent my books to PGX, they have their own internal pressers, and they did a good job. So that was the method that I used. Like if I was going to do it again, like if I was going to send books out to any of the graders, I would use their pressing companies. They're like the ones that are internal. So CGC doesn't have that, but CBCS and PGX both do. So I recommend doing it that way. There's lots of Canadian pressers. I think it's Comic Doctor or something is one of the local in Canada pressers, and he does a good job. So you really have to just search around. The funny thing is a lot of these pressers that do really good jobs, they have YouTube channels. So sometimes just searching on YouTube, you can find a lot of these local pressers to whatever place you live, and they will you can see the work that they do because they'll showcase it on their channel. So that's just a tip of finding how good pressers. The next is, what tools do you do for research to research the books and want to target or to go after? So one of the problems with me is my background is I'm a web marketer. So I know the search engines really, really well. And that's a bad thing as a collector in a way, because it makes me want to buy so many books. I just buy way too many books because I'm always searching. I know what to look for. I know how to find things. And in a way, it makes me find way more stuff than I really intend to. So generally what I'll do is I'll find something that I'm interested in. Like, for example, WandaVision. And I'll just be interested in that show. And maybe it's before it even comes out. I will be looking into what characters could be potentially in there. So I'll do a search for WandaVision and find out, oh, there was a WandaVision comic. And then I'll find out what characters are in that comic. You can use Comic Vine. That's a way of finding out the characters in that comic. And then I'll look up their first appearances. And then I'll keep on digging into what characters are related to the storylines that could appear in the show. So I kind of do this kind of really complicated thing where I end up buying way too many books. But some of the books will become super hot. And I actually would say that in general, the books that I bought 1 to 2 years ago, even though some have gone down, majority of them have doubled, tripled, or quadrupled in price. And some I've seen go up as much as 10 times. And it's just because I'm buying books that not only are they like the first appearance of some random character, but they're first appearance of a character that I'll check to see how active that character is within the comic series. So that's another thing. Using Comic Vine is a way of doing that. I also use Key Collector Comics. I find that if it's on there, it's already it's already on everybody's radar and people are already using it. I also look at what the other channels are saying, like Lords of the Long Box or Comic Tom, Reggie Collects. I look at those channels and see what they're saying. Another one is there's a bunch of good YouTubers that do these speculation videos, and I kind of respect them. So yeah, so that's how I do my research. Okay, so what drives you to collect? You would say that the drive, whatever it is, has diminished over time, all that time. Okay, so what drives me and has that waned over time? Is the drive the thrill to hunt for you or something else? Artwork, scarcity, availability, etc. Okay, so what drives me in general with comic collecting is I do love comics. I do love the stories. I do love the characters. And generally, as long as there's some kind of cool character, or I'm going to start chasing that character and books related to that character. Um, a good example is I've gone on about this comic many times, or character, is Miss Mask. I've been trying to collect all her Golden Age cover appearances because I really like the character. So I will search her out, and I like the artists. There's certain artists I like Matt Baker. I'll look for his stuff. Or Alex Schomburg, I'll look for his stuff. Or Jack Kamen, I'll look for his stuff. I'll look for these different artists, and I'll try to get a pretty good collection of them. And I will really dive into that collecting, and there is that thrill of the hunt, and it's a thrill of discovery for me. History is a big driver for me. I love history, so I find that I get really into that history. Where did they make their first appearance? Where was their first cover appearance? Where was their first book appearance? And I look for all those things, and that really drives me. And I like comics that are a little bit off the radar of most people. And the weird thing is, a lot of the time when I notice that a lot of these books that I find out that are obscure books, all of a sudden become hot later. So it kind of works out well for me. That actually happened. I told the story in a previous video about how I bought Dr. Fate. Now, I bought that way before any announcement about him. I just liked the character. I just thought he was a really cool character, and I really wanted to get his first appearance. And I made a deal. I bought the comic. I paid for it, and the guy wouldn't ship it because all of a sudden it got hot, and that drove me nuts. And he did refund the money, but it was just really frustrating that sometimes you get that thrill of finding something, that one really rare comic, and it gets dashed because bad sellers. But that's life. That does happen when you're searching for comics. I'm very sad about that, just so you know. That's why I keep on bringing it up. Okay. So next, what percentage of your collection would you say is straight up speculation for purposes of trade or resell? Do you sell or trade, or are you a purist collector, just accumulate? I just accumulate. I'm a hoarder. I am a total hoarder. I probably have lost children behind these books or something because I just keep on collecting. It gets bigger and bigger. I am a hoarder, and I'm open about that. I do collect for the sheer enjoyment of collecting. I do speculate on a lot of books, a lot of characters. And the way I speculate is the belief that maybe these are going to be really cool characters in the next show. And I really like characters that are related to shows that I enjoy. So I will buy based on that, where I think, hey, maybe this is going to be a really cool character in the next MCU movie. Or and then I'll try to pick up all the characters related to that, and I'll get really excited about it. Lately, though, I have been buying one or two extra copies of certain books that I think are more than that, where I think there's a bit of speculation, for the purpose of maybe reselling later or giveaways. So sometimes I like the idea of promoting this channel, giving away some books, and I try to pick up books that I think have that potential to really go up. And if they really go up and then I give it away, it'll be a great gift for somebody. So that's kind of where I'm going with that one. Okay, next question. Wow, he had a lot of questions here. Okay, what are your long-term plans for your collection? Do you think you'll ever sell them off, donate, consolidate, trade up, or leave to a family member, etc.? My goal is to really make this collection something that is for my children. I want them to take the collection. I want them to learn about it. I'm going to try to teach them about it. If they get the interest, it's a little hard. Kids never seem to have that interest in what the parent is doing. The parents are always uncool. But I'm trying to get my kids into it. I actually talked to them about it, and they said they would never sell it because they would feel like it was selling a piece of me because they know how much I love my comics. So I kind of like that idea of that heritage, giving the collection to the next generation, and the next generation gives it to the next generation, and so forth. That like kind of part of the family legacy, maybe. I kind of like that whole idea. So that's really my plan. That it's going to be part of my family's treasure. um, so the next thing is you recently said you have or collected many other things over the years. Canadian coins, stamps were two examples cited. But comics are your passion. Do you think your passion will ever wane over time once you get a certain point? Will you slow down on comics and speed up on another type of collectible? It does happen where I kind of go through these phases. I was really into coins when I was a kid. I collected coins much more than I did anything else. And then after I got to university, I switched to comics. I really got more into comics and less into the coins. So my knowledge about coins is really based on that transition where I know the prices of what coins went for back then. And I did buy a few years back a guide to see how much my coins have gone up. And I was like shocked how much they had gone up because I had like this one bill. I also collect bills, currency, and I paid like $100 for it, and now it's worth like a few thousand. It's gone up crazy amounts. So I have no idea how much my coin collection is worth. I'm guessing it's a few 100,000 because it's really gone up. But yeah, I am passionate about comics right now. Probably what you'll see with me now, because I feel like I've finally embraced that passion. So I've been kind of always interested in comics and just really always wanted to go this way. What you'll probably see me do more of is maybe collect a little bit of the paraphernalia around comics, like the models, the Funkos, the other elements to the collecting. So you'll see a bit of that maybe. But I think my passion is pretty strong for comics, and I hope to maintain that passion for forever. But what you'll also see is I am slowing down in terms of the comics that I'm buying. I still have a lot of comics that I've ordered and purchased, but I've gotten most of the major keys that I've been looking for. And what you will see is that hopefully, hopefully if I can, I don't want to buy a lot of little ones because I kind of running out of space. But what I want to do is buy more of the big grails. So I want that Action #1. I want the Detective Comics 27. I want those big grails in my collection. And that's probably where I'm going to go, like where I'll save up some money and buy that big grail. Or that's really the way I'm planning on going. There are some comics that I'm also looking for that are a little bit more affordable. Like I'm still trying to get that SOT collection. I'm still trying to get the Wonder Woman collection. So that's kind of where my interests are going. So probably sticking with comics for a while. So this channel is going to last a while as a result. Okay, next question person. Rocket Fighter 8. Rocket Fighter 8 asked, do you have any plans to include your wife or kids in future videos like some comic book YouTubers? Believe it or not, I begged my family to come on my last live video. And I was like, hey kids, come on. And I was like, it was like pulling teeth. They just wouldn't do it. They didn't even want to help me. I was like trying to get them to help me just run the computer and answer people's comments and stuff like that. They would not do it. It was painful. I was yelling at them. I felt kind of bad actually afterwards. I kind of yelled at them, hey, please help me, but they just had no interest. Which is a shame, I don't think they will be on my channel anytime soon. Give them a few years, maybe you'll see them on this channel, but my wife and kids are very shy, incredibly shy. Almost, it's one of those jokes within my family that my kids, they're shy around other people. And so much so, like people ask, "Oh, can they talk?" Like, because they're just so shy, they just don't talk. And it's kind of a sad thing, but we always joke, "Oh, can they talk?" Because they're very talkative when they're with us. But yeah, my family is very shy, and they're not too keen on the whole YouTube putting their face out there kind of thing. Even though they're good looking kids, actually, strangely enough. Even though they have me as a father, I guess my wife balances them out, so they're very good looking kids. So yeah, they're like 12 and 16 are the ages. So my son just turned 12. So okay, so next question, Michael L. Great job tonight. Thanks for the answer. That was from last week. Question is there a site or book to find key comics in the lines of comics? Or do you really have to research every book? Not sure if that came out right. So this is kind of similar to one of the other questions where, where do I go to research? I recommended Comic Vine. There's also Key Collector Comics. There's YouTube channels like this channel where you can learn about a lot of comics. Generally, what I recommend, if you're gonna like pick your battle in terms of what comics you want to collect, for example, Marvel or DC or Image or whatever, you want to go into that, pick that niche, and then pick your age. So what I mean by that is pick golden, silver, bronze, copper, or modern. So you kind of know where you want to, collect. And once you get kind of that targeted focus in terms of how you want to collect, then it becomes a lot easier to know what to collect within that genre. Especially so, for example, for me, I might say DC Comics, and then might say, hey, let's focus on a character that I really like, Wonder Woman. And I will focus on Golden Age Wonder Woman because I think those are the coolest. So I will focus on that particular collection. And generally, what you can do is it becomes much easier to search for those comics. You can look at My Comic Shop or eBay or Heritage Auctions, and you can really pin down those comics because now you know very focused what comics you're looking for. So that's kind of been in my approach a bit. I'm still not very successful at that approach because I buy pretty much everything. I buy every generation of comics. So, but I'm trying. I'm trying to be less of a hoarder. Um, so, Comic Book Ninja, what are your thoughts on the Black Widow movie or the Suicide Squad? Can you do some comic book movie reviews or show some first appearance at the same time? Okay, so I actually have every character from the Suicide Squad's first appearance, and I have both movies of all their first appearances, and first Starro, first all of them. So I really do like doing that where I buy all the first appearances, and I would like to do that kind of movie review, and I was planning on doing it. But when I because Suicide Squad had so many characters in it, I was like, oh man, I have to get that comic from that box, that comic from that. It was just like they're all over the place. So it just became very daunting for me to try to dig through and find all those comics in my own collection. So I am planning on doing it actually, like kind of a retroactive movie review plus first appearance of all the characters. Now, I didn't actually watch Black Widow yet. I haven't. I'm waiting for it to be free because I heard so many bad reviews about it that I figure, hey, I'll just wait for it to be free on one of my subscription channels. So I haven't watched it. And Suicide Squad, I had a very bad experience with Suicide Squad. Okay, so Suicide Squad, when they labeled the rating for it, they labeled it as PG or maybe 14, like 14 14 age, right? So I was like, okay, we can bring the kids to this. And I brought my wife. My wife, within a few minutes, where people are getting blown up and bad things were happening and some nudity, my wife was freaking out. She was like, "You brought the kids to this?" It's like she was just freaking out the whole time during the movie. She got so upset, she walked out on the movie. So that was my experience watching this movie, that I was kind of embarrassed and, feeling like, oh man, am I such a bad parent bringing my kids to this maybe not meant for kids movie? So, um, and that kind of ruined the whole experience. I might have liked it a lot more had I not had that negative experience. My wife doesn't like comic books and she doesn't like comic book movies. So that was a bad idea to bring her to the movie. It probably would have been a great movie if it wasn't for that. There's a bunch of things that I didn't necessarily like about the movie, tell you the truth. I don't like when people are disposable. I actually love when characters are built up and you really love those characters, and they're not just disposable people. Like, um, I that's one issue that I've always found with Suicide Squad, that I want to have that emotional attachment to the characters, and when they just kill them off like with no regard to their personality or to who they are, I feel like I can't really love the character that much. Also, I had a little bit of issue with Harley Quinn, that I felt like there was that little storyline with her where she was with the dictator guy. That was a little bit just, I felt like it was just added on. I don't know why they had to do that. So, there was certain issues that I found. I really liked Polka Dot Man. I thought he was brilliant. I wish they hadn't killed him off, because I think he had so much potential to be like one of these like really cool characters where they could bring him back and he could still have that kind of deranged syndrome where he's seeing his mother everywhere. And I thought that was kind of cool. I really liked him as a character. Um, and I liked Ratcatcher and Bloodsport. I actually thought their dynamic was pretty good. Um, so there was those elements that I really enjoyed about the movie. Um, I felt like there was a lot of backward storytelling, which was not done maybe in the best way, where they could have had the sequential flow a bit better. Where, typically what you do is you introduce the characters, give their backstories, and then their team. You build them up. This one was a bit like kind of like backwards. It was a little bit disjointed and could have been planned out a bit better, and there could have been better pacing within the movie. So, as I said, my experience with Suicide Squad was a bit tainted, so I'm a bit biased against it. But I still would give it a 6 out of 10, even with that bias. So maybe it's 7 or 8 out of 10 if I didn't have that negative influence in my movie watching experience. So that's my story there. Now we're on the last page. Okay, so 3 more questions. And these are all really good ones. So if you survived an hour of me doing all these Q&A, I'm impressed. This has been a long video. Okay, so Joe Amon asked, maybe someone asked this before, but what are your favorite good girl GGA, which is good girl art, from the modern comics? Actually, I showed this on the like live stream with Dave Collects Yaya, but I'm gonna show it again because it's worthy of showing again. And this is not modern age. It's actually it's considered like Copper Age, but this is like Airboy. Airboy number 5 is a Dave Stevens art. So I really like Dave Stevens art. This is really great stuff. I also like a lot of the Bad Girl art from the 90s. So I really did like Vampirella and Lady Death, Lady Rawhide, What's it called? Actually, I'm going to show you one more. I'm going to grab it. The other one I was thinking about was Witchblade. Some good girl art. Very sexy good girl art. Okay. I got this really cheap, actually. I paid $20 for it. So I was quite happy with that. It's like a $100 book, but I got it really cheap auction. And then I like this. This is, what's his name? What's the name of the guy? Adam Hughes. That's what I was trying. I was trying to remember the guy's name. Another one would be J. Scott Campbell. He does some really good girl art. So there's a bunch of modern good girl art. This is Zatanna. I actually deliberately bought this one slabbed because I like the fact that it's the 13th issue and it's got that like whole 13 element to it, and she's wearing her pure magic costume. I really like this cover. So and the series from Zatanna, brilliant covers, really great covers. I tried to get the whole series. I'm missing like 1 or 2 issues. It kind of drives me nuts that I'm missing 1 or 2 issues from that series, but really great art. Zatanna, beautiful good girl art. Okay, so those are some of the modern ones that I liked. Yeah, so that's that one. Also another one I just want to quickly mention is Bunny Man and Man Goat. There's the B covers that are kind of like these sexy good girl art covers. I like those as well. Okay. Oh, and one more. There's so many that I think of, but once I think about some of them, there is like Elvira, and that there's a series where it's Elvira and Vincent Price. There's some really good girl art covers there, and Betty Page is another one. Lots of really good stuff they're actually producing nowadays. Dynamite is really good at producing good girl art covers. They do a lot of these Jungle Girl ones. They do Vampirella, and they do I believe Betty Page is also them. They do Deja Thoris. So there's a lot of really good stuff from them. And they do Red Sonja. So those are all good girl art. Okay. The next one is from Kiwi. Who will win? JSA versus the Avengers. Okay, and he put a little disclaimer on that. JSA doesn't have Superman. So yeah, so JSA is the Justice Society of America, and that's the golden age. That's the golden, like sort of the goldenish age. So you got like, I think the members were, I'm gonna say Dr. Fate, Spectre, and Wonder Woman, those kind of characters. They would destroy the Avengers like so easily. The Avengers are like Hulk, Thor, but Spectre, I think, is just so mega overpowered. You just destroy them. And Dr. Fate's like mega overpowered. And Phantom Stranger, I believe, was Phantom. No, Phantom Stranger wasn't. But you got Aquaman. I believe he was there. I'm just trying to remember the team members for JSA. And then you got maybe Atom Smasher. I'm not sure. So yeah, so I think just Spectre alone and would just demolish the Avengers. He's just so overpowered. Next one is Solomon Grundy versus Hulk. I would actually say Hulk would beat Solomon Grundy. Solomon Grundy is super powerful. I get it. He's kind of like mega powerful, but Hulk is just insanely powerful. The more he gets powered up by damage. So I would go with Hulk on that one. Atom versus Ant-Man. So I would go with Ant-Man because I'm biased towards Ant-Man. I like Ant-Man better. So they're very similar in terms of the powers. So I would go with Ant-Man. But very similar, rip-off of each other kind of characters. So yeah, so I'd go with Ant-Man just because I like Ant-Man better. And it would be a person, like, give him just kudos for being more likable in my opinion. I just like Ant-Man better. Okay, So Comic Mag Musings asked, I have two questions. First, is there any truth in the rumor that the U.S. plans on paying off their national debt by selling Canada? So this is a bit of a joke between us that we, I've been joking that Canada is going to annex the United States as its 11th province. Sort of like a joke, like the Canada versus United States kind of battle. So he's joking that U.S. would sell off Canada. And what I would say is probably both countries are going to go bankrupt and be bought by China. That's probably the most likely scenario. Um, Second, do you have your first editions of the Seduction of the Innocent and Parade of Pleasure books? So I actually brought it. This is my Seduction of the Innocent book, and the other one is Parade of Pleasure. And I'm actually trying to get a copy of that. I've been trying to get a first edition with the dust jacket. That's really hard to get. So I'm actually have a couple sources where I'm buying that one, but that's a later thing. I'm really trying to get that book. But right now I just have the Seduction of the Innocent, and this is the first edition with the dust jacket, which is super rare. Like it's just a really rare book, really in this state, I should say. Just a really great book to have. So yes, I do have it, and I actually read it when I get these different books, and I reread the lines that are quoted when referencing those books that I get for the SOT collection. So the Seduction of the Innocent is a really great read. Gives you real insight into what they were thinking in terms of why these books were considered to be so offensive and so harmful to children. And once you get into that psychology and you kind of understand the way people think, you can sort of understand how to maybe counter that kind of thinking, the logic that you need to employ to basically get people to sort of maybe reject the idea of censorship in favor of having just good books and having the creative freedom to create good stories. But yeah, I love that history. So I was super excited to get that book in my collection. I actually did a specific video about getting that book, just an unboxing video about that one book. And I plan, once I get the whole collection, I'm only about 40 issues, maybe a little less than 40 issues away from getting the entire Seduction of the Innocent books. Over the weekend, before filming this, I actually just won a major Seduction of the Innocent book. So I'm looking forward to getting that as well. So that has been the Q&A. You survived. If you watched all this length, I'd be really impressed by you. And you deserve a prize just for having watched 112-minute, like 1 hour and 12-minute long video, 13. I can see the little timer. So it's a very long video, and I appreciate anyone that has watched and stuck around this far. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and put your question below, and I will shout it out next week. Also, check me out on Instagram. I post so many cool things on Instagram that you got to check me out there. So, and you can message me, which is always fun. So, and I'll even answer any questions from Instagram on this video as well. So, definitely check me out there. It's in the description. Check it out. Again, thank you for watching. Bye for now.